accounted for hundreds of millions of dollars in Iraq. The firm is Custer-Battles. It's being charged in a lawsuit of defrauding the Coalition Provisional Authority of tens of millions of dollars during work in Iraq, which included securing Baghdad International Airport. 2 former employees sued the company last year under the False Claims Act, seeking to recover damages on behalf of the U.S. government. They allege that Custer-Battles repeatedly billed the occupation authorities for non-existent services or at grossly inflated prices. A few months after they filed the suit, the Justice Department declined to intervene on the whistleblower's behalf.
In the early 2000s, Iraq was a place gripped by chaos. A country gutted by invasion, powerless, broken. And while the world watched the smoke rise from Baghdad, 2 men saw an opportunity. Scott Custer and Michael Battles, Army Rangers turned businessmen, they walked into a war zone and walked out with millions. This is the story of how 2 Americans gamed the system, exploited confusion, and almost got away with it.
My fellow citizens, events in Iraq have now reached the final days of decision.
In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq under the justification of dismantling weapons of mass destruction and toppling Saddam Hussein's regime. What followed was not just a military occupation, but a commercial one. Billions of dollars flowed into the country to rebuild infrastructure and secure a fragile new order. Among the contractors drawn to profit potential of Iraq were 2 former Army Rangers, Scott Custer and Michael Battles. Together, they formed a company, Custer-Battles LLC, and quickly secured government contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. Their rise was swift, but so was their fall. Their first major contract came from the Coalition Provisional Authority, or CPA, the transitional government established by the United States. Custer-Battles was hired to secure Baghdad International Airport, a high-profile assignment, a chaotic zone, and an enormous responsibility. But something wasn't right. According to the internal company memos and the whistleblower testimony, Custer-Battles repeatedly submitted false invoices, exaggerated costs, and fabricated expenses. One such incident would become emblematic of their operations. At Baghdad International Airport, the company reportedly seized abandoned Iraqi Airways forklifts, machines left behind in the wake of the war, and instead of acquiring new equipment, Custer-Battles allegedly repainted the forklifts, applying their own branding, and then billed the Coalition Provisional Authority thousands of dollars per month, claiming the machines were leased assets. The forklifts were just one part of a broader pattern. Invoices were inflated, equipment was misrepresented, payments were made. One of the shell companies used in the billing, Mayock Denver International, was allegedly created to funnel fake charges through a separate entity, helping mask the fraud. As these allegations came to light, 2 former company employees, Robert Isaacson and William Baldwin, filed a federal whistleblower lawsuit. They claimed Custer-Battles had defrauded the U.S. government by exploiting CPA contracts which forged documents and false reports. The forklift scheme wasn't just about hardware. It was symbolic, a clear act of deception hiding in plain sight, enabled by chaos and paid for with international reconstruction funds. And it worked, for a time. In 2004, a federal whistleblower lawsuit was filed under the False Claims Act. The suit alleged that the company had defrauded the government out of $3 million. It was the first such case arising out of the Iraq War. The Department of Justice declined to intervene, but the case proceeded. The case files contained damning details. A memo from the U.S. Air Force described how Michael Battles, during a meeting with CPA officials, accidentally dropped a spreadsheet on the table. On it, an attempt to bill $9.8 million for expenses that had only cost the company $3.7 million, a 162% markup. Clear fraud. And that wasn't all. The Air Force also accused the company of submitting a $2.7 million bill made up of forged leases, inflated invoices, and duplications. Another charge, $157,000 for a helicopter pad in Mosul, actually just costing $95,000. The memo concluded that the actions of Custer-Battles were so serious or compelling in nature that they should be disqualified from receiving any future government contracts. But even that wasn't enough. In 2006, a federal jury found Custer-Battles liable for fraud. The verdict, $10 million in damages. But there was a problem. The judge soon overturned the verdict, not because the fraud hadn't occurred, but because the CPA was deemed a non-U.S. government entity at the time of the contract, and since U.S. taxpayer funds weren't technically involved in the payment stream, the False Claims Act didn't apply. The court ruled that because the funds used, mostly seized Iraqi assets and international funds, weren't U.S. money, the case fell outside the law. In the end, Custer-Battles walked away. No criminal charges, no accountability, and just like that, they were gone. The company dissolved. Scott Custer and Michael Battles disappeared from the public eye. In a rare statement, Battles insisted that they had done nothing wrong and had only tried to serve their country in a time of need. The Custer-Battles scandal was a preview of things to come. In the early years of the Iraq War, oversight was thin, billions were spent, and for some, war became a business. A former CPA official once said that the occupation of the Iraq War was the Wild West, and for a time, companies like Custer-Battles were its cowboys.